If all your beliefs, your habits, your so-called romantic charm were stripped bare, if every mask you wear for society were torn away, what would remain of you? Would there be anything left that could stir admiration or even desire? Or would you vanish into the faceless multitude, another forgettable soul swallowed by the herd? We live in a world of illusions, and none is more absurd than the theater of attraction. Men walk the earth imagining themselves conquerors of hearts, while in reality they are slaves, enslaved not to women, but to the blind will within themselves. Desire masquerades as affection, lust pretends to be love, vanity dresses itself as charm, and beneath it all lies the same relentless truth, the will to live. That blind, insatiable force uses you as its pawn. You think you are adored for your looks, your wit, your ambition? Do not flatter yourself. If you are secretly every woman's crush, it is not you, the individual. She longs for it, is the archetype of strength, security, and vitality that nature whispers through you. You are no more than a mask worn by the will, and every sigh of attraction is its ventriloquism. And yet, let us not delude ourselves with romantic poetry. Attraction is not a fairy tale, but a battlefield. Men and women alike are compelled by forces they scarcely comprehend. The herd tells you that success in love is about wealth, beauty, or confidence. But I tell you, it is about something far darker, your ability to embody illusions that soothe the suffering of existence. So let me give you 5 signs, 5 revelations that show you are secretly every woman's crush. Not because you possess some mystical charisma, but because you happen to mirror the fundamental cravings of the will. But beware, to understand these signs is to understand the futility of the chase itself. For every desire satisfied births a new torment. Every conquest is another chain forged by the will. So, listen closely, not as a man chasing flattery, but as one ready to confront the pitiless truths of attraction, suffering, and illusion. Attraction, like everything else in life, is contaminated by the herd. The majority of men live and think as the crowd dictates. They copy gestures from films, repeat advice from self-proclaimed experts, chase beauty according to fashion's decree. And so they all appear alike, peacocks with borrowed feathers. But the one who does not follow, the one who stands apart, suddenly becomes the object of secret desire. Why? Because individuality is rare, and rarity creates illusion. The herd craves security, yet secretly worships rebellion. A man who dares to speak against popular opinion, who refuses to be swallowed by trends, becomes a silent beacon. Women sense, often without words, that such a man cannot be owned by the crowd. And because all secretly hate the crowd, yet fear leaving it, they are drawn to him who escapes it. Then there is endless desire. Desire is infinite, but its objects are finite. Thus, attraction is never about satisfaction, it is about projection. A woman does not desire you. She desires the version of herself reflected in your presence. She admires not your reality, but the illusion you awaken in her. And the more you resist pandering to desire, the stronger its grip becomes. For nothing inflames longing more than the appearance of independence. And here lies the illusion of progress. Society whispers that love evolves, that relationships are more refined than in the past. Do not believe it. Strip away the costumes of etiquette, and you will find the same primal calculations: strength, health, vitality, resources. Modern romance is merely ancient instinct disguised in poetry. Thus, the first sign you are secretly every woman's crush is this: you stand apart from the herd, not by artificial rebellion, but by authentic detachment. You refuse to be intoxicated by the illusions of progress. You embody what others dare not, the courage to live as if the herd did not exist. Here, the mask must be torn away completely. What is attraction? It is not about love, it is about the will. The will, as I have said, is the blind, ceaseless force that drives all existence. It is the hunger that no meal satisfies, the thirst no drink quenches, the desire that no embrace extinguishes. It is not rational, it is not moral, it simply is. And every act of attraction is its puppet theater. When a woman desires a man, she does not consciously calculate, "Here is the one I love for eternity." No, she is compelled by the will to secure, through him, the continuation of life. Attraction is a stratagem of nature, not a conscious choice. The body desires the body before the mind invents its poetry. The masses, irrational, frantic, are its most obedient disciples. They believe they fall in love, when in fact they fall into the abyss of will. They believe they choose their partners, when in fact they are chosen by instincts older than civilization. And so the second sign you are secretly every woman's crush is this. You radiate the raw signal of the will, not wealth alone, not beauty alone, but vitality, a strength that whispers of survival. She sees in you not merely a man, but the unspoken promise of life, overcoming decay. You become a vessel of nature's blind purpose. Yet, here lies the cruel irony. The more you embody the will, the more enslaved you are to it. For while women may secretly long for you, you are still but a marionette, dancing to the same invisible strings. Let us cease the flattery. What you call romance is the glittering costume the will throws over its own naked compulsion. The will is not a gentleman. It does not knock at the door of your heart with flowers and music. It breaks in through the cellar of your instincts and rearranges the furniture while you keep the parlor tidy. You tell yourself stories of soulmates and destiny. The will writes a single sentence: continue. It is the same sentence it writes into the sap of trees and the blood of beasts, into comets and crustaceans, into the shiver of a violin string and the cry of a newborn. Continue. This is why attraction bewilders the mind. Reason pretends to steer. It is allowed to adjust the mirrors while life hurtles forward under a power it neither created nor truly governs. Then we invent poetry to give the journey meaning. The mind is a courtroom hired after the crime to defend the suspect. The verdict, however, was issued long before the trial. Nature wants to live, and it will conscript you into its campaign. Yet precisely because this is so, a curious law governs the theater of desire. The will is both blind and cunning. Blind because it drives without end or purpose beyond continuation. Cunning because it presses into service everything: your posture, your voice, your courage, your calm, even your refusal to secure its aim. This is why what you radiate matters more than what you recite. The person who is secretly every woman's crush does not advertise. He emits. He does not plead. He is. The will perceives the will the way iron feels the pull of a magnet, without syllogism, without debate, with a surety deeper than thought. You ask, if it is all the will, what room remains for me? Enough to mislead yourself or to unmask the game? Enough to become a better instrument or to refuse the orchestra when you hear the tune for what it is? Between those two choices lies the entire moral drama of love. The second sign that you are secretly every woman's crush is not loud, adolescent, or theatrical. It is not a peacock's tail. It is a lion's silence. The signal is vitality, tranquil vitality. Not the nervous fireworks of a jester seeking applause, but the steady glow of a hearth in winter. It is the calm assurance that your center of gravity lies within, that storms may pass, but your keel holds. Vitality in this sense is not reducible to symmetrical features or fashionable muscles. Those belong to the market of appearances and depreciate with the season. The will searches for something more primitive, more durable, a felt capacity to endure, a gait that does not stutter before disapproval, a voice that does not tremble before silence, eyes that can look at reality without immediately begging it to be softer. This is not cruelty, it is composure. A man consumed by the opinion of others broadcasts dependency, and dependency is the opposite of vitality. A man who can stand alone, who can say, if necessary, I will eat bread and water but not sell myself, speaks a dialect the will understands. The resilience of life against negation. What does a woman perceive here beneath consciousness, before words? She senses that with you, contingency loosens its grip. The world is precarious, existence is an illness with only temporary anesthesia. To stand near tranquil vitality is to feel, for a moment, that the ceiling won't collapse. Nature rewards that impression with attention. She leans in, not because you dazzled her, but because you steadied her inner seismograph. Vitality so defined is not a trick to be memorized. It is a temperament carved by effort, solitude, and a willingness to carry one's own weight without complaint. Do you see the paradox? To be secretly desired, you must not live for desire. You must be committed to something that outlives the applause of rooms. The will respects what it cannot purchase, and it pursues what does not pursue it. What inflames longing more than anything? Not velvet words, not algorithmic compliments, but poise in the presence of alternatives. In a world of hungry faces, the one who is not famished becomes a banquet. Everyone is selling. You appear to be already fed. The will reads that as power. Power, in the zoology of desire, is simply the freedom to refuse. This is not the juvenile game of withholding to manipulate. That is still servitude, still a performance staged for the audience you secretly fear losing. True poise is a metaphysical fact, not a tactic. It is the equilibrium of a person who has found his axis elsewhere ideally, beyond the carnival of striving. Such equilibrium produces a specific fragrance in social life: non-reactivity. The herd jerks. You respond, if at all, with delay. The crowd demands immediate affirmation. You measure before granting your yes. Where others offer their attention like loose coins, you give yours like a signature, rarely, deliberately, and only when you can stand behind it. Observe how the will uses this to intensify attraction. It is drawn to the obstacle, the challenge, the cliff that refuses to crumble. Why? Because overcoming resistance promises a stronger illusion of meaning. The more difficult the climb, the more precious the summit appears. The one who does not instantly lean in becomes the mountain. Most people are vapor. You become granite. Granite is not warm, but it is dependable. And dependability is erotic to a consciousness exhausted by accidents. Do you see how the crush forms in secret? Not from flattery received, but from dignity maintained. Not from being everywhere, but from being somewhere firmly, quietly, stubbornly. The will mistakes dignity for destiny. That mistake is your magnetism. If you wish to witness the will's logic in a single syllable, learn to say no. Fence not with swords, but with limits. Boundaries are the grammar of self-respect. They convert your life from public square to temple. The guardian of a temple does not shout. He stands. That standing peaceful, unwavering, creates an atmosphere women register even when they could not explain it to themselves. They recognize the costliness of your yes because they have met your no. Boundaries achieve what endless availability cannot. They frame your presence, and framed presence is presence intensified. A painting without a frame dissolves into the wall. A man without boundaries dissolves into the crowd. When you are everywhere, you are nowhere. When you are accessible at every hour, you become a hallway rather than a room. The will seeks room spaces that hold form, spaces that promise shelter. Hallways merely pass things along. Consider also the quiet ethics embedded in boundaries. When you tell the truth about your limits, you refuse the lie of infinite capacity. You do not oversell, overpromise, or overperform. You do not accept invitations that betray your priorities. The will, paradoxically, respects this honesty because it resembles the constraint that governs nature herself. Rivers become powerful not by being everywhere, but by consenting to banks. Your banks make your current. From here, a subtler attraction arises. Trust. When a woman discovers that you will not betray yourself for approval, she concludes, often unconsciously, that you will not betray her merely to avoid discomfort. Boundary keeping is the apprenticeship to fidelity, and fidelity, in a world built on substitutes, glows like a rare metal. Schopenhauer once borrowed the fable of hedgehogs huddling in winter. They long for warmth, but their spines wound one another. They draw apart to stop the pain and grow cold again. They repeat this motion, finding the distance that best balances warmth and injury. So do we all. The will drives us together to ease the frost of existence. The same will arms us with spines, pride, fear, history that prick precisely when we draw near. Attraction is therefore an oscillation, a dance of approach and retreat. The aesthetically minded confuse this with romance. The metaphysician recognizes a pendulum in a cage. Here is the lesson for those who would be secretly desired. You must master the distance. Too near, and you become one more source of pain. Too far, and you are pure frost. The right distance is not measured in meters, but in manners. It is the respect that refuses to invade another's interior without invitation, and refuses to permit invasions of one's own. You do not rummage, you do not interrogate, you do not suffocate. You stand at the threshold with warmth, not with demand. The will, accustomed to grasping, is surprised by restraint. Surprise sharpens interest. Restraint dignifies it. The herd's mistake is to confuse closeness with control. They clutch and call it love. The result is predictable. The more they clutch, the more the will resists. The more it resists, the tighter they clutch, until attraction, once luminous, suffocates. You, however, accept the hedgehog law. You approach without annexing. You give warmth without confiscating freedom. This choreography is not sentimental, it is metaphysical realism, and realism is rare enough to be intoxicating. Attraction bores quickly when it carries only the weight of biology. It needs ventilation, a window opening onto the absurdity of our condition. Humor is that window, not the noisy clowning of the insecure, but the unforced smile of one who has seen through the world and forgives it anyway. Such humor is not entertainment, it is mercy. It announces, "I know we are all conscripts in a war we did not declare, and I will be kind to you while we serve." Why does this charm the will's instruments? Because it relieves them. To laugh cleanly at the human predicament is to momentarily suspend the will's tyranny. For an instant, desire loosens its grip. For an instant, representation becomes transparent. For an instant, we exist without bargaining for advantage. If you can create that instant, not with routines, but with presence, you will be remembered in rooms you barely entered. The crush is often a memory of ease. Be ease in a world of friction. Suffering is not an accessory of life. It is the thread. The one who tries to hide it becomes ridiculous. The one who parades it becomes tedious. The rare man carries it plainly, like a tool he must use. He does not make of pain a resume. He does not deny pain as if it were vulgar. He incorporates it, lets it shape his patience, gives it no more publicity than necessary. This sobriety is compelling because it announces competence in life's true craft, the management of sorrow. Is there anything more magnetic than composure under burden? It promises reliability without boasting. It suggests depth without confession. Women read this, again before language. Here is someone who will not drown me with his panic when the boat takes water. The will, concerned above all with survival, nods and steers attention toward you. Do not mistake this for stoic vanity. Stoicism often hides a craving to admire oneself as iron. What I speak of is simpler, a refusal to bargain with the universe, a willingness to hold one's post without narration. This quality cannot be hacked. It is not a trick of posture. It is the residue of trials accepted without melodrama. The third sign that you are secretly every woman's crush is sovereign attention. We live amidst the wine of scattered minds. Everyone's gaze is pawed by glass rectangles. Everyone's speech echoes something said an hour ago by someone else. In such a carnival, the ability to attend to look fully when looking, to listen without preparing your reply, to speak from a settled thought rather than borrowed agitation, is erotic in the highest sense. Why? Because attention is the coin with which we purchase reality from illusion. Sovereign attention does not chase novelty. It chooses its object and dignifies it. When you offer that to a conversation, the world briefly regains contour. The will senses competence here, a mind disciplined enough not to hemorrhage its energy. And because attention is the most credible gift you can give, costly, finite, irreplaceable its presence, casts an aura over you. It is not the spotlight that makes you visible, it is your refusal to need it. You light what you look at. And those who are looked at truly do not forget. This is not about performing interest to seduce. Performed attention has the nervous rhythm of purchase. Sovereign attention is freedom in action, and freedom, like every scarce good, invites desire while refusing to be traded for it. Desire follows the law of economics. Abundance cheapens, scarcity elevates. But unlike coins, the currency of desire is not under your mint. It is printed by restraint. The more you show you can live without constant approval, the more others sense that your presence is not to be squandered. This is why indifference, when genuine, attracts more than servility. Servility is a confession. I have nothing but my willingness to please you. Indifference whispers, I have a world beyond you, and if you vanish, my access remains intact. The will cannot resist this illusion of self-sufficiency. It reads it as power, and power, even when silent, is magnetic. Thus, those who are secretly adored are not those who chase, but those who ration. Not because they calculate scarcity, but because they live by it. They do not pour themselves out into every vessel, and therefore they are remembered when they are gone. There is, however, a strange loophole in the tyranny of the will. Art, in the act of aesthetic contemplation, desire loosens its grip. When you truly look at a painting, or listen to music without demanding possession, you experience life without striving. For a moment, you cease to be a pawn of the will and become a witness of the world as representation. Now, imagine a man who carries that aesthetic disposition into his presence. He does not grasp at others. He observes, appreciates, allows them to appear as they are. Such attention relieves the suffocating atmosphere of conquest. To be near him is to breathe, and breathing, in a world addicted to clutching, becomes intoxicating. This is why an artist, or even one who simply knows how to see, so often becomes the object of secret desire. He reminds others of a freedom they forgot was possible. Attraction here is not toward his possessions, but toward his ability to pause the wheel of craving. Most men mistake manipulation for charm. They read manuals on persuasion, memorize tactics of seduction, and end up radiating calculation. But calculation belongs to the will. It reeks of need. Compassion, by contrast, is a rebellion. When you genuinely act out of concern, not advantage, you break the chain of striving. You treat another not as means, but as end. This is rare, and therefore precious. Women sense it instantly, the difference between a hand that grips and a hand that steadies. This compassion is not sentimental weakness. It is strength refusing to exploit. And because it cannot be faked for long, it becomes the deepest root of secret admiration. One may be praised for wit or wealth, but one is remembered for mercy. Here we reach the most haunting paradox. The one most desired is often the one least enslaved by desire. To renounce is to rise above the game. The will is baffled by renunciation, for it expects only obedience. When it meets refusal, not cynical bitterness, but calm withdrawal, it trembles. The man who can step away from illusions without rage, who can live without constantly demanding new pleasures, becomes enigmatic. The will in others cannot decipher him, and so it circles him like moths around a flame. He does not chase, and thus he is chased. He does not flatter, and thus he is flattered. He ceases to hunger, and therefore he is secretly every woman's hunger. But beware, this paradox is cruel. To renounce desire is to taste freedom, but it also estranges you from the common lot. To others, you are magnetic. To yourself, the magnetism is a burden. Attraction is the price you pay for detachment. History itself is nothing but the diary of the will, written in blood and vanity. Nations march, empires rise, revolutions ignite, all in the name of freedom, progress, or destiny. Yet, peel away the rhetoric, and you will find the same insatiable striving, the same blind craving to dominate, to survive, to propagate. Take Alexander the Great. To the herd, he appears the hero of civilization, spreading Greek culture across the known world. To the metaphysician, however, he is merely the will wearing a crown, intoxicated by endless conquest. His attraction was not his kindness, nor even his genius, but his embodiment of raw vitality. The world bowed because it smelled in him a force too relentless to be denied. And yet, how did it end? With a corpse of 32 years, consumed by fever, leaving behind a shattered empire. The will used him, then discarded him. So too with Napoleon. Women swooned at his presence, not because of his charm alone, but because he radiated the unyielding energy of the will's command. To be near him was to feel the pulse of inevitability. But the same will that gave him glory also gave him exile on a barren rock, gnawed by boredom, betrayed by the very striving that had once raised him up. Thus, history teaches the lesson. Attraction to vitality is not love of the man, but worship of the will. The individual suffers, even as the world proclaims him irresistible. Let us descend from emperors to the crowd. Observe the masses in any age ravenous for spectacle, intoxicated by leaders who offer certainty, bored by the calm truth of reason. Why? Because the will in them craves direction. Look at the 20th century. Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. Their attraction was not born of moral virtue, but of the will's magnetism disguised as destiny. Crowds adored them. Millions followed, not because they were loved as men, but because they mirrored the crowd's unconscious hunger for power and identity. In their presence, individuals felt absorbed into something greater than themselves, an illusion that temporarily numbed the pain of isolation. And yet, what was the outcome? Suffering, ruin, devastation. The same pattern repeats. The will seduces through charisma, then devours through catastrophe. Attraction and destruction are two faces of the same blind compulsion. Thus, the one who is secretly admired must recognize. Adoration is never about you. It is about the will seeing its own shadow and calling it divine. If history shows us the collective, psychology shows us the intimate. Consider the phenomenon of repetition compulsion, which Freud uncovered long after I had already written of the will. Men and women return again and again to partners who harm them, as moths return to flame. Why? Because the will does not seek happiness, it seeks continuation. Even pain, if familiar, serves its purpose. A woman may secretly desire the man who wounds her, not because she enjoys suffering, but because the will whispers that his vitality promises survival. The intellect protests, the heart resists, yet the body obeys. Attraction is not rational, it is metaphysical servitude. And the man who is secretly every woman's crush, he is not the gentle flatterer, but the one who mirrors back her unconscious longing. Sometimes he steadies her chaos. Sometimes he amplifies it, but always he awakens what reason cannot tame. That is why his presence lingers long after his words are forgotten. Modern society congratulates itself on progress, equality, technology, psychological insight. Yet the will mocks these achievements. For all our sophistication, the same primal patterns remain. Swipe through your machines, attend your banquets, write your sonnets behind each gesture. The will hunts for survival. In the Middle Ages, a knight offered his sword and castle. In the Enlightenment, a gentleman offered wit and salon conversation. In the digital age, a man offers curated photographs and clever text. Yet the foundation does not change. Strength, security, vitality, endurance. These are what secretly inflame attraction. The packaging changes, the essence persists. And thus, if you find yourself admired across eras, it is not you alone, it is the timeless grammar of the will expressing itself through you. Progress is a costume. Instinct is the actor who wears it. Look at the great romances of literature, Tristan and Isolde, Romeo and Juliet. What do they reveal? Not eternal love, but eternal enslavement. Their passion burned so violently precisely because it was forbidden, because the will thrives on obstacles. Remove the obstacle and the fire cools. Their tragedies do not contradict my philosophy, they confirm it. The will demanded intensity, and if that intensity destroyed them, so be it. And in our time, celebrities parade before us as gods of attraction. Millions fall into infatuation with figures they will never meet. Why? Because the will projects onto them vitality, glamour, the illusion of permanence. Yet behind the screen, these idols are often broken, addicted, or hollow. The crowd worships not the person, but the reflection of its own hunger. Even in ordinary life, the pattern is visible. A woman longs for the man who does not flatter her but stands apart. A man pursues not the woman he respects, but the one who awakens his blind compulsion. And both wake from their dream to find themselves chained, wondering why satisfaction slipped away the moment it was grasped. Thus ends our examples. In history, society, literature, and the common street, the same law resounds. The will commands, attraction obeys, suffering follows. Independent thought is the beginning of freedom, yet it is the rarest of virtues. Most men do not think they mimic. They speak in the borrowed language of newspapers, pulpits, and platforms. Their opinions are not theirs, they are echoes. To the herd, this feels safe, for to think truly is to separate oneself from the warmth of the crowd, and solitude terrifies them. But liberation demands solitude. Only when you can face the abyss without leaning on the herd's chatter do you begin to see clearly. You see that attraction, status, love, ambition, all the ornaments of life are but masks worn by the will. They glitter, but beneath them lies the same emptiness. To be secretly desired may flatter you, but to be inwardly free transforms you. And no one achieves this by following the crowd. You must be willing to be misunderstood, to endure ridicule, to appear cold. For truth is never applauded by the herd, it is feared. Thus, the first act of liberation is intellectual courage. To think as yourself, not as society instructs. To ask, am I pursuing this because I will it, or because the will in me has already chosen without my consent? When thinking alone cannot quiet the storm, art provides refuge. Art is not decoration, it is metaphysical medicine. It allows us, for a brief hour, to look upon the world not as pawns of the will, but as witnesses of its spectacle. Consider music. It does not represent the world, it is the echo of the world's inner striving. And yet, when you lose yourself in it, you are not striving, you are released. In the cadence of a symphony or the melancholy of a nocturne, you find reprieve from the endless chase. Or painting. To behold a landscape with true aesthetic contemplation is to forget yourself. Desire halts, calculation ceases. For a moment, you are pure eye, pure witness, not claimant or conqueror. The will loosens its grip, and you breathe. This is why the artistic spirit is often secretly admired. The artist embodies not just skill, but a window out of servitude. He reminds us that existence can be witnessed without being consumed by it. To live near art is to taste, however fleetingly, the possibility of freedom. Most think Compassion is weakness. They are wrong. Compassion is rebellion. For in compassion, you see through the illusion of individuality. You recognize in the sufferer before you the same will that torments you. You see that their striving, their longing, their despair, all of it is the same as yours. And in that moment, you refuse the will's command to use them as means. You act not for advantage, but for alleviation. You help, not because it benefits you, but because you cannot look upon shared suffering without response. This act is the highest ethic, because it is the rare moment when the will's domination is suspended. Compassion is the seed of morality, the antidote to egoism, the only true form of love. All else romantic desire, admiration, lust is merely the will disguising itself. Compassion is different. It does not demand, it does not grasp, it relieves. Thus, to be compassionate is to resist the will at its core. And paradoxically, this makes you more magnetic than any strategy. For in a world of calculation, sincerity shines like a diamond. At last, we arrive at the hardest step, renunciation. To renounce is not to hate life, but to strip it of illusion. It is to say no, not in bitterness, but in clarity. To renounce the endless chase for admiration, the ceaseless hunger for validation, the intoxicating pursuit of pleasure that is the highest strength. Society fears solitude, for it reveals how empty its entertainments are. But solitude is the training ground of freedom. Only in silence do you hear the chains falling away. Only in solitude do you learn that your worth does not depend on being seen, wanted, or envied. To renounce is not to flee into nothingness. It is to step off the stage, to stop dancing for the will's applause. It is to live lightly, carrying little, needing little. And in doing so, you become untouchable. You may still be secretly desired, but now it no longer binds you. Attraction loses its chains, and admiration loses its sting. You are free, not because the world has changed, but because your gaze has. What then is liberation? It is not wealth, not power, not the admiration of women or men. Liberation is the ability to look at all these with detachment, to know they are phantoms of the will, and to decline their tyranny. Independent thought clears the fog. Art provides reprieve. Compassion redeems suffering. Solitude strengthens the soul. Renunciation frees it. Together, these steps carve a path where one can walk not as pawn, but as sovereign. You may still feel the tug of attraction. You may still be admired in secret, but you no longer mistake it for meaning. You know it for what it is, the will, blind and insatiable, whispering through human hearts. To resist is difficult. To renounce is painful, but to do so is to rise above the endless carnival of striving. It is to stand where few dare stand, at the threshold of freedom. So here we stand, at the edge of the abyss. We have unmasked attraction as the mask of the will. We have seen in kings and emperors, in crowds and lovers, in celebrities and neighbors, the same pattern repeating. Blind striving, momentary intoxication, inevitable suffering. We have traced the outlines of liberation through thought, art, compassion, solitude, renunciation. And now, one question remains, one that cannot be ignored. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you return to the herd, pretending you did not hear? Will you resume chasing admiration, flattery, desire, as if the truth had not been whispered to you? Or will you dare, for once, to live with eyes open? Look around you. Everywhere you see the same spectacle. Men performing for women, women longing for men, all of them secretly worshipping the same false god. Each thinks they are unique. Each is merely repeating the grammar of the will. They run in circles, dressed in costumes of romance and poetry, never noticing that they are prisoners. And when the mask slips, when beauty fades, when desire cools, when betrayal cuts, they are left stunned, as if the law of gravity had betrayed them. But the law was always there. The will always ruled. Only ignorance made the prison feel like a palace. Now ask yourself, do you wish to be admired or do you wish to be free? The two are not the same. Admiration is the will's trap. Freedom is its defiance. To be secretly, every woman's crush may gratify your vanity, but it chains you to the very cycle you now understand. To renounce, even while still desired, is to take one step out of slavery. And yet, liberation is not comfortable. It is not celebrated. The herd will mock you for detachment, accuse you of coldness, call you arrogant. They will say, "Why not join the chase like the rest of us? Why not play the game?" And you must answer, "Because I have seen through it. You do not renounce out of weakness, but out of strength. You do not retreat out of fear, but out of knowledge. Remember, the crowd fears solitude because in solitude they hear the truth. They seek noise, company, admiration, romance, anything to drown the silence that reveals their chains. You, however, must endure that silence. It will not flatter you. It will not entertain you. But in that silence, you will find sovereignty. And here is the final irony. When you renounce, you will be desired more than ever. For nothing draws the will's attention like the man who no longer obeys it. To women, you will appear enigmatic, untouchable, compelling. To men, you will appear strong, even if they cannot explain why. You will be secretly admired not because you chase, but because you refuse. Not because you perform, but because you stand. Not because you are enslaved, but because you are free. But beware. If you taste this freedom only to use it as a tool of seduction, you are still a prisoner. You are still kneeling before the will, using your supposed independence as bait. True liberation means renouncing even that advantage. It means living as if admiration were nothing but wind against your window, noticed, perhaps, but not invited in. So I ask you, with the severity of a judge and the compassion of one who knows suffering intimately, will you dare to live without illusion? Will you dare to walk alone, admired but detached, desired but unenslaved? Or will you return to the carnival, another mask among masks, until the curtain falls and death shows you what you refused to see in life? For death is the one teacher none can ignore. It tears every illusion apart. It shows us that all the striving, all the desire, all the admiration was nothing but smoke in a storm. When that hour comes, what will you cling to? Not wealth, not fame, not the memory of being desired. Only truth remains. And so I leave you with this warning. The will is tireless. It will whisper through your veins until your final breath. If you do not resist, you will live as its slave, admired perhaps, but never free. If you resist, you will suffer the loneliness of clarity, but you will suffer as a sovereign, not as a puppet. Ask yourself now, which is worse, to live admired and chained, or to live free and alone? To be the crush of every woman, or to crush the will within yourself? Choose, for in choosing, you reveal not what you desire, but what you are.